Hey guys, we're here today on the 1 year anniversary of Valheim's launch. And I wanted to take a moment to look at the last year for Valheim and see what improvements they have made and how the game has changed over their first year. Hopefully this video can help you if you are a returning player. You can maybe jump straight to the timestamp of the month you left in and see what changes have been made since you last played the game. If you are a new player looking at the game, you can kind of get an idea to see what direction the developers are heading in and what they've done so far so you can know if it's the game for you. As we progress through this, we're going to be talking about the major changes or noteworthy things happening each month and not be going through every single detail of what they did in the patch notes. We're also not going to be getting into details about the numerous bug fixes they did, even though throughout nearly every month, even the quieter months for the team, they did patch a lot of bugs and adjust a lot of things in the game. For starters, if you have not been following Valheim at all, it is a procedurally generated survival crafting game. When you create a world or a seed in the game, it procedurally generates the entire world. Now, while a system like this does rob you of unique locations and really sprawling visuals because they can't handcraft certain areas of the game, it does give you replayability and some interesting dynamic by you not knowing what's around each corner. It does create a situation where each biome that is the same, such as meadows or black forest, are roughly the same no matter where you go. There are pros and cons to the idea of procedurally generated world, but I think Valheim does it pretty well. The emphasis in Valheim is primarily placed on exploration and building. Now, if you do enjoy combat or an RPG style game, there is plenty of that in the game in my opinion. I think the combat is pretty good and one of the better survival combat games I've played. And the game does give you a decent RPG progression system and direction to go, with a decent amount of goals and bosses to take down. There's a good amount of homesteading with gardening and farming crops, and taking care of tamed animals. There is plenty of base building to be done. There is ship sailing across the open sea, which is entertaining as it is, and they plan to add more things to the ocean biome as a whole. And although I've only played it personally single player, I hear the game is just a blast when you play it multiplayer in a group. Now that we have an idea, for anyone who hasn't been following it, of what the game is in general, we're going to go through each month since it's been launched and go through noteworthy changes or milestones for the game as it has progressed. Starting out in February, since it launched, Valheim was able to pass 4 million copies sold within that first month, which is an incredible feat and a ridiculous amount of sales for the game to pass. They did an incredible amount of bug fixing, as they've said that they had way more players in the game than they planned, and their primary goal was to adjust and fix the various bugs and issues that got brought up from such a large player base. They didn't get a lot of changes to happen in the first month beyond important additions like the enemy aggro icon whenever you're stealthing, but a large number of issues and bugs were adjusted in the first month, and it wasn't all quiet. Once we moved on to the month of March, Iron Gate was able to quickly pass 5 million and 6 million copies sold of the game. They gave us a sneak peek at their first update they were planning to bring, which was Hearth and Home. They fixed a very annoying wolf despawning issue in the game, mainly affecting 2-star wolves. They added the weight of your equipment, affecting how much you get knocked back by, which is a huge addition and helped a lot with combat. And then they made the controversial changes to the hoe, cultivator, and hammer, and tweaked how often or how fast you can use them, which was not well received by a lot of players. I, for one, did not have a big problem with it. They did eventually tweak it again to dial it back a little bit and let players use it a little bit more like it was originally. Once we moved on to April, they modified how terrain operates a little bit with a bug fix where you were able to raise giant sections of terrain with one click using the hoe, and made it very easy to build ground walls. This was also a very controversial change, but I for one think it was a good one. They also made some massive stability improvements with the game's terrain and how it was processed and loaded, which helped a lot with load times, stuttering, and lag. Once we got into the month of May, Iron Gate updated the models for the Troll and 2 of the main bosses in the game, the Elder and Bone Mass. And they additionally added the very nice and helpful warning for the autosave in the world. They gave a 30-second notification on the screen that your world was about to autosave, which was very helpful since the random autosaves coming out would slightly pause your screen, and I for one would every time think something was wrong. May also had fixes to the harpoon, which would originally in the game be kind of bungee-like and sling things forward if you caught them at the right angle. They made it more rope-like and more controllable. Once we moved on to the month of June, they added the missing wolf and fueling raids. The wolf one being the you are being hunted raid, which is maybe the most dreaded raid in the game at the moment. Although it's a very tough raid, these are good additions in my opinion because it increases the difficulty of the game, gives you more to be fearful of, and adds a difficulty anywhere you go, which is the point of a survival game. They fixed a much needed bug and issue with berries not respawning in certain locations, one of the most vital resources in the game. They adjusted serpents in the ocean fleeing from your character whenever you would deal enough damage to them, which made them a pain to hunt down, especially when you were solo. And they made improvements to raising ground with the hoe, and made it less block-like and square, and gave it a more rounded look. June was also the month that the team announced that they were not going to be able to complete their very ambitious roadmap, and let people know that Hearth and Home was taking longer than they expected. At the end of June, a couple important changes that were made were Grey Dwarfs got improved aim with their rock throwing. They added in the Blob Raid as well, and they tweaked the AI to attack players' buildings a little bit more, and not just mindlessly chase the player around even if they can't get to them. Admittedly, they did it too much, and they started ignoring players and demolishing buildings, but on the very first of the month of July, they dialed this back and were able to get a decent middle ground between the two. July and August had the team on vacation for most of it. It was not very active. They did come back pretty strong in September with the release of Hearth and Home, which brought quite a few new things, like the dark wood building pieces, the crystal wall, iron building pieces in the form of floors and walls, openable shutters, the obliterator, cartography table, new oven system along with a new cauldron system and adjustment to how the cauldron worked, the iron cooking rack, new deco items like stackable coins, treasure chests, and things like that, the new comfort items like the hot tub and the stone throne. They added some new weapons in the crystalline battle axe and the silver knife. They added some shield changes with bone shields, iron bucklers. They also adjusted how blocking works in the game and how it works with the new stagger bar that they added in the Hearth and Home update. They added lock saddles and the ability to ride loxes, not to mention that locks can now reproduce like they couldn't in the early parts of the game. You're able to now name your pets, and there's no more accidentally killing your pets. You need to build a specific butcher knife in order to butcher them or turn PvP on, which can save you from killing that 2-star on accident. They made it to where birch and oak trees could be replanted, along with the onion vegetable and a lot of associated foods. They added 12 new foods in total, and they overhauled the food system and how you were given health and stamina through these foods. They also added new enemies in the form of growth and tar pits, giving you another resource to be able to hunt down. And then maybe my favorite addition in the game is they added a toggle key for auto pickup. So now you're able to lay things on the ground and shut off auto pickup and not have the hassle of picking it up in your inventory as soon as you get in the area. Now, admittedly, when Hearth and Home launched, the food overhaul was fairly controversial and people did not like the new system, or at least a large number of players didn't. Now, there was a debate and some people said that it was a good change and that others just needed time to get used to it. However, Iron Gate was very good in this situation, and the very next day from Hearth and Home's launch, they tweaked the food system and adjusted the numbers on them and quickly reacted to what the community was saying. And from everything I can tell, that fixed a lot of people's problems with the food overhaul. They adjusted the numbers on stamina foods and health foods and made things more balanced across the board. Once October rolled around, they were listening to the feedback that oak and birch trees were not dropping enough, and they adjusted their rates for drop accordingly. They also adjusted the stamina cost for using any melee weapons since their Hearth and Home update. Another thing they did in October was added back the ability to parry ranged attacks from enemies. This was removed kind of quietly way before this and wasn't a big factor at all for anybody in combat, but they realized that people enjoyed it and it was kind of a fun aspect, although it didn't make sense, so they threw it back in there. Towards the end of October, they also teased new caves coming to the mountain biome, along with a revamp of the Mistlands for their giant Mistlands update they are currently working on. Once November rolled around, they added the new Root Armor and the new Abominations creature. Both very good additions in my opinion, and I'm excited to see them add more gear sets as we go farther. Then we get to the month of December, where Iron Gate added a huge feature of making tamed wolves no longer howl all the time while they're in your base. They also adjusted all pets to stop being scared of fire, which can be a hassle sometimes with boars when you're trying to move them with fire, but in general is probably a good addition across the board so that they breed more often. They also adjusted the new Abomination creatures' drop chances and added Guck to their drop table, which gave us a way to continually get this resource to fuel some torches. It's also in December they added armor stands to the game, which was a highly requested feature since launch. January was another quiet month for Iron Gate Studios and has not been accompanied with any noteworthy changes. Iron Gate Studios was able to wrap up their first year with some nice achievements, since Valheim was able to win the PC Gamer Game of the Year award, and it also won the Not So Massively Game of the Year award from Massively OP. Valheim was not able to win the Steam Game of the Year award, but it did come in as one of the runner-ups. Now, obviously, any gaming award is simply based off of opinion or some sort of vote, which we know cannot be entirely accurate. So in the long run, these awards don't really matter. It is, however, important to note that Valheim in its early access state was able to garner a lot of attention. Winning these awards or coming in runner-up isn't the important part. The important part is that an early access game by a small indie developer studio was able to garner all of this love. The community around it really loves the game, and although they took a while to put out large updates like Hearth and Home, and most people were upset at the speed that they moved, you can see with this year in review that there have been a lot of changes in the game and a lot of adjustments made. The most important part about this last year for Valheim is how much they cared about fixing and adjusting bugs and making a smooth running game. This has been a very good year for Valheim. I hope that it moves better for them in the future, and I look forward to the changes they're going to bring as we go across 2022. I'd like to say thank you to Iron Gate Studios for making a good and quality game and sticking with it and making some good changes to this point. I'd also like to congratulate them on the Game of the Year awards they did win, or the ones that they came up runner-up in. Hopefully they take this momentum and this steam, and they continue to build upon this very good early access game, and they continue to listen to the community. Hopefully this video was entertaining for you or helped you figure out what has changed in the game since you last played, or if you haven't played at all, what kind of changes are done in the game so you can get the most accurate and correct info to this day. Thanks for watching. I will see you next time.